The Islanders have an impossible decision to make, and it's only getting more complex. Marc Gatcomb has just signed a contract extension with the New York Islanders, which means the team officially has way too many forwards in the lineup. They're going to have to figure out what to do with some of these players. And in this episode of Islanders Digest, we're going to talk about what that might look like and what it means for Islanders training camp. A lot of exciting things, and this might get a bit messy for the New York Islanders. Really quickly, before we get into it, I just want to thank all of you who've already subscribed to the channel. Your support has meant so much. We're up 621 subscribers in the past month. Absolutely incredible growth for the channel. I appreciate every single one of you who supports these videos to continue to make Islanders content every single day. Now let's get right into talking about this situation and why I think it is such a challenging decision for the Islanders to make. I don't think this is an impossible decision in the sense where there's no right answer. I think it's more one of those things where I think when I look at the roster, the answer is pretty clear. It's just not an answer that makes you feel good. But let's start with the positives. Marc Gatcomb has signed a contract for 1 year with the Islanders worth $900,000. It is a 1-year deal. And what that basically means is that money belongs to Marc Gatcomb. A two-way deal means you have a different amount of money based on whether you play in the NHL or the AHL. A lot of fans seem to think it means a player can go up and down, and they get upset when players sign one-way deals. That is not the case. Regardless on what type of contract Marc Gatcomb signed, because of his age, if the Islanders sent him down to the AHL, he would be able to be claimed on waivers, so that doesn't really make a difference. And the good news is Marc Gatcomb had a good season in the NHL, and he's getting paid as a result. The tough news is the Islanders don't have space for Marc Gatcomb, or really a lot of the forwards they've recently signed, and something is going to have to give. And not to spoil the video here, I think Marc Gatcomb might be the player that goes. And let me know what you think about that in the comments below. I do know a lot of people like Marc Gatcomb. I was actually surprised in yesterday's video to find out how many Islander fans seem to not like Tsyplakov, who we're going to talk about in just a second. He's going to make this situation even more complicated because Tsyplakov has not yet signed a contract with the Islanders. I believe he's going to sign very soon, as does Stefan Rosner also believe that. As of right now, he is going to arbitration with the Islanders, and Rosner has clarified that he can only award a 1-year deal since Tsyplakov is going to be a UFA after that, and an arbitrator can't award those years, which gives the Islanders, in my opinion, even more incentive to try to figure something out with Tsyplakov, because I do think the worst-case scenario of this situation would be a 1-year deal for Tsyplakov. I would rather the Islanders lock him up, not long-term, but get 2 or 3 years out of Tsyplakov. I think that would be a better way to go about it. But let me know what you think about that, because clearly from the comments, a lot of you guys do not seem to like Tsyplakov. And on the other hand, you really like Gatcomb, and why I'm really curious to see how this goes for the Islanders. Is why I think this is going to be a really tough decision for them, because Gatcomb played well in the NHL. He really did. I'm not going to try to take anything away from him. He had 8 goals in 39 games, 1 assist, and while the stat sheet wasn't incredible, what was clear watching Gatcomb is he clearly made an effort to play a tougher game, the type of game the Islanders wanted him to play. And I really appreciate everything Gatcomb did for the Islanders last season. The thing is, they now have some players who are even younger than Gatcomb who show more promise playing those roles. We're going to talk about it in just a second, but as a result, I really think that Gatcomb might be the player who's left out just because he has a lower ceiling than some of these other players, and whether that means he plays some more time in the AHL before he gets a chance, or whether that means another team picks him up, that will be yet to be seen. But I just really feel like based on all these other players the Islanders currently have, I really can't see an outcome that Marc Gatcomb makes this team next season, unless there are injuries, which of course is a worst-case scenario. And frankly, why you sign Gatcomb to this contract as insurance? Because this is a player who, if he doesn't get claimed, it's exactly the type of player you want in the AHL if players get injured as the season goes on, because he's shown he can play at the NHL level. Still, it's a good thing he got that 1-year contract, because I really don't know what's in store for Gatcomb this season. Now, in terms of the impact on the salary cap that contract has, it actually makes no difference at all. I was actually misreading this yesterday. I forgot the Islanders can only have so many contracts in the NHL, which is why there's such a tough decision that has to be made with Gatcomb. But as a result, basically when they signed him, just one of their 2-way contracts got sent down to the AHL. So basically, the Islanders did not lose any cap space by signing Gatcomb. They still have 3.875 to figure out what to do with Tsyplakov. And frankly, if the Islanders sign Tsyplakov for $3 million, then that remaining 875 can be used to take care of what they need to take care of in terms of bonus money or stuff like that, especially considering the Islanders have some younger players who are going to get playing big minutes next year and potentially could earn a lot of bonuses. That's really good news for the Islanders, as they really don't have to do anything in terms of the salary cap. I thought the situation was a bit worse when I took a look at Puckpedia yesterday. They are in a really good situation when it comes to salary cap. Where it becomes more complicated is what players are getting minutes. These are a lot of players who are going to be competing for minutes. Frankly, Hudson Fasching at this point, even though it has not been officially confirmed, it's pretty much confirmed that Hudson Fasching will not be with the Islanders anymore, which to me is a little disappointing. I really like Hudson Fasching's story. I think he's a really good person. But in terms of this roster, I do think it's time for the Islanders to go in a different direction. Hudson Fasching was not offering what the Islanders needed. At points in his first year, he was clutch, but there's been this cycle with Fasching, then McLean, and then we were kind of speculating that Gatcomb would be the next person in this cycle, where the Islanders bring up a player, they have a really good season, they get an extension, and they never really live up to it. We'll see what happens with Gatcomb, but in terms of Hudson Fasching, it didn't work out. And in terms of Kyle McLean, as we're going to talk about players who might not make the Islanders next season, I think Kyle McLean is a perfect candidate to not make this team, just because, like a player like Gatcomb, he really does not have another level to his game, and that's nothing against him. He played hard on the Islanders' fourth line, but one thing Darsh has done really effectively so far, by bringing in players like Emil Heineman, he's really upgrading the type of players that are going to be playing on the Islanders' fourth line, and as a result, I don't think these players really have a role anymore. We'll see when it comes to Gatcomb. I really like the way he played physical and really adapted his game, but I think we're going to see as Islander fans, once Emil Heineman takes the ice, he plays that game at another level and has more scoring potential, and as a result, it's going to be really hard for a player like Gatcomb to make the lineup, which does upset me. I like Gatcomb a lot, but we're just looking at the main lineup here, and so many of these players are already not in the lineup. The way this roster the Islanders currently have is already really strong, and you got to consider here that Engvall and McLean are not even in this lineup. This currently doesn't even have Gatcomb on the depth chart. I would assume they would probably take Gatcomb over McLean, although it is complicated because McLean is a center as well as left wing. That does make him a bit more valuable. Perhaps the easiest solution is to move a player like Pierre Engvall to the AHL. That's something the Islanders did last season. I don't think Patrick Waugh would object at all to sending Pierre Engvall to the AHL. But even if you do that, you got to consider looking at this with Tsyplakov and Heineman currently on the fourth line. There really is not a role for Gatcomb, and this is going to be a really interesting thing to see coming out of training camp. Of course, no spot should be just assigned to a player automatically. Other than Bo Horvat and Matt Barzal, I honestly don't think there's any player in this lineup that is completely safe to start the season. Maybe Holmstrom, considering his potential at a young age, but I think every other one of these positions is going to have to be earned. Lee is going to have to earn his position. Drew's going to have to earn his position. Palmieri, Shabanov, while I do think he is going to get a chance at the NHL to start, he's definitely going to have to show that he deserves his time above players like Marc Gatcomb. But I just feel like that is the most likely outcome, which is a shame. Again, I don't think this is a hard decision in terms of what is the best roster, on paper at least. You can definitely say there's more value in certain players based on what they do, physicality, in terms of physicality, things like that. But I think on paper, it's clear that starting the season, this is the best lineup for the New York Islanders. Now, if you want to say it can get more complicated if you throw in a player like Callum Ritchie, I completely agree. And when we're talking about this forward problem for the Islanders, with the Islanders going to have 15 forwards on this roster, we're not even factoring in players like Callum Ritchie who deserve a shot to make this team out of training camp. We're just talking about the players who have NHL contracts. And considering with the 23-man roster, the Islanders are realistically going to want to hold an extra defenseman and potentially even an extra goaltender, considering they did sign an extra goaltender to back up in case of Varlamov is not going to be able to go full strength. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with this roster. At the very least, I think two forwards are getting cut, and I really think Gatcomb is one of the players who might face that. Another player who I think definitely is not in the clear, even though Patrick Watt is apologizing to him. I think Anthony Duclair is going to have to prove that he still belongs in the NHL. I think he's another player like Pierre Engvall, where it will be a little easier for Matthew Darche to send him down, especially considering now Matthew Darche is not the player who's is not the GM who signed these players, which means he does not have the same loyalty that a Lou Lamoriello would have had to do for Duclair. So we're definitely gonna have to see what happens when it comes to this Islanders lineup. Let me know in the comments who you'd like to see be the odd mans out, because everybody cannot make this team. That's just how it works. So let me know what two forwards on the current lineup do you think should not be with the Islanders. I personally think the ones that make the most sense for me, at least right now, having not seen how they show up at training camp, Pierre Engvall seems like a really easy choice just because you know you can send him down to the AHL and nobody's going to claim that contract. So if you do need him later on the season, you can still call him up. And I think the other one that makes a ton of sense for me is Marc Gatcomb. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. I don't like the idea of sending Gatcomb down and potentially having him claimed by another team. I just don't see a role for him on the Islanders. And maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there is a role that he can play on this team. But just looking at this roster right now, if everyone's healthy, I can't see him fitting in. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. My name is Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders!